In 1492, Spain became Catholic Spain. That same year, Granada fell, ending the last Muslim kingdom on the peninsula, and the Alhambra decree ordered every Jewish resident to leave or convert. By 1614, the job looked finished. The last Moriscos loaded onto ships bound for North Africa. The population of Al-Andalus erased down to the last name. That's the version most people know. It's also almost entirely wrong. The population never actually left Iberia. Only their religion, their names, and their legal status did. 500 years later, their DNA is still there to prove it. Erasing a population that had lived in Iberia for nearly 800 years was never a single decree. It was decades of grinding administrative work. Al-Andalus was the name for that stretch of Muslim-ruled Iberia, a political and cultural presence lasting from 711 until Granada's fall, home at different points to Muslims, Jews, and Christians living under the same system. Before 1492, Muslims who stayed under Christian rule after the Reconquista were legally called mudejares, tolerated as a distinct religious minority. The Alhambra decree changed the calculation for Jewish residents first, giving them a stark choice: leave the country or be baptized. Out of a Spanish population of roughly 7.5 million, somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 people chose baptism over exile. 10 years later, in 1502, Castile forced the same ultimatum onto its Muslim population, ending mudejar status and creating a brand new legal category almost overnight: the Morisco, Christian by paperwork, Muslim by memory. To police who counted as really Christian, Spain also rolled out limpieza de sangre laws, blood purity statutes requiring documented proof that a family had no recent Jewish or Muslim ancestry. That proof was required before someone could hold public office, join certain guilds, enter a university, or marry into particular families. Proving a clean bloodline became its own bureaucratic industry, complete with paid certificate hunters and hired witnesses. Then, in 1609, King Philip III signed the order meant to close the file completely. Roughly 300,000 Moriscos, about 4% of everyone living in Spain, were physically removed to North Africa over the following 5 years. The crown used its own armies and navies to carry out the operation. On paper, this looks like the most centralized project the Spanish monarchy ever executed. One king, one church court, one outcome for everyone. In practice, control on the ground was never that clean. In Catalonia, the Bishop of Tortosa quietly sheltered Morisco families who had already been marked for expulsion, and let entire households return to his diocese after the order had technically already removed them. Elsewhere, families took their case directly to local courts and won the legal right to stay. Some people, rather than leave the only home they had ever known, sold themselves into slavery just to remain on Spanish soil. The written policy said total removal. What actually happened was negotiated parish by parish, court by court. To catch the people who didn't leave and didn't convert sincerely, Spain built one of the most invasive surveillance systems in early modern Europe. The Inquisition didn't need a confession to open a case. It needed a pattern of behavior. Neighbors reported families who refused to eat pork. They reported households that changed their bed sheets on Friday afternoons or bathed before holidays that weren't on the Christian calendar. Those small domestic habits were treated as evidence of hidden religion. The limpieza de sangre paperwork worked as a second wall, blocking careers and marriages for anyone who couldn't produce a clean enough family tree. Together, surveillance and bureaucracy turned hiding your ancestry into a performance that had to be maintained for an entire lifetime. Some performances lasted for generations. Trial records from the Inquisition's tribunal in Zaragoza, opened in 1484, document Aragonese converso families secretly maintaining Jewish ritual practice for more than 30 years behind a fully Christian household. The only reason historians know this today is that the paperwork eventually caught up with them. In Portugal, a converso named Custodio Nunes stood trial in the town of Évora in 1604 for exactly this kind of double life. His defense wasn't denial. He told the tribunal that it was possible to be both a Jew and a Christian at the same time. That claim on its own shows how blurred the supposedly clean religious line in Iberia had actually become by then. None of this stayed confined to old trial records. It's written directly into the Y-chromosome of people living in Spain and Portugal today. The first layer of evidence, a 2008 University of Leicester study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics analyzed Y-chromosome data from 1,140 men across the Iberian Peninsula and the Balearic Islands. The average Sephardic Jewish ancestry found across that sample was 19.8%. The average North African ancestry was 10.6%. The second layer, that ancestry wasn't evenly spread across the peninsula. In southern Portugal specifically, the Sephardic signal climbed as high as 36.3%. That concentration lines up with where forced conversions had been most intense 5 centuries earlier, not with where random migration would predict. In Minorca, by contrast, the same study found close to zero Sephardic ancestry, which is exactly what you'd expect if the signal tracks specific local history rather than some general Iberian average.
The third layer comes from archival historians rather than geneticists. Trevor Dadson and Francois Martinez, working independently from Spanish archives, found that small Andalusi communities persisted in Spain for decades after the supposed 1614 deadline. The fourth layer is the protection network itself, the Bishop of Tortosa's shelter lists, and the court rulings that let specific families stay. Those weren't rare exceptions on the margins of history. They were the actual mechanism by which part of the population survived a policy built to remove it entirely. The fifth layer is happening right now. Modern consumer DNA testing routinely returns Sephardic Jewish or North African ancestry results to Spaniards and Portuguese people who had no family story preparing them for it. For a lot of them, it's the first time anyone in the family has ever had a reason to ask where a particular surname or a particular habit passed down without explanation actually came from.
The official record tells a simple story. 1492 and 1614 as clean bookends, with Catholic Spain on one side and Al-Andalus erased on the other. What that record leaves out is everyone who stayed anyway. Baptized, renamed, married into Christian families, and within 2 or 3 generations, indistinguishable on paper. None of them were ever counted as survivors because the paperwork had already declared the population gone. That's exactly where the myth collapses under scrutiny. Spain's own expulsion order looks, on the page, like a completed operation, a closed file with a clear before and after. But every piece of independent evidence that checks that page against the actual population tells a different story. The bishop's shelter lists contradict it. The court appeals contradict it. The Converso trial records, stretching decades past the supposed deadline, contradict it. And the 2008 genetic data confirmed it in a way no single trial record ever could, putting a hard number on what the paper trail alone had only hinted at. The expulsion succeeded completely as an administrative act and failed completely as a demographic one.
There are 2 ways to tell this story. The comfortable version says Spain closed a chapter in 1614 and emerged as something genetically and culturally new. The accurate version says nothing that clean ever happened. The same population absorbed a new religion, a new public language, and a new name, while carrying the old lineage forward in every generation since, whether anyone was keeping track or not. Al-Andalus was never a place that ended in a specific year. It's a population that simply stopped being asked what it used to call itself.